Crime goes hand in hand with the city of Los Angeles. She's seen some of the most notorious gangs, crews, cartels, and mobs. Gangs who supply the demand for illegal activities dot the landscape, like tossing a fistful of black sand onto a white rug. From stick-up kids to white-collar criminals, the LAPD are always on high alert to protect the city's residents. But things are not that simple. Where there's people, there's bound to be chaos, in one form or another. Which brings us to the highly organized criminal group that's been in the headlines for decades, Armenian Power 13. Let's take a trip back to the first arrival of Armenians into the United States, particularly how they populated Los Angeles and how they make up a significant portion of its multicultural inhabitants. Development: Armenian Americans, an historical overview. Between the years 1912 to 1913, while the Ottoman Empire was witnessing its own demise, a genocide of Armenians was carried out. This is widely regarded as the first genocide of the 20th century. 1.5 million Armenians lived in Ottoman society, and at least 800,000 to 1.2 million were either killed individually or through systematic massacres. For example, death marches, which were carried out to ensure mass murders. The United States couldn't stand idly by and opened its borders to Armenians. The first wave of Armenian immigrants began settling in the States. Around 1923, 2,500 to 3,000 Armenians had made it to Los Angeles. Most of them were from Western Armenia, what is now Eastern Turkey. The numbers kept growing each passing year. Areas such as Glendale, East and West Hollywood, Montebello, and Pasadena became their home. They now make up one of the largest ethnic groups in the Los Angeles area, with approximately 200,000 Armenians residing in LA County. As of 1990, the city holds the largest Armenian American community in the US, as well as the biggest population of Armenians in the world outside of Armenia. The trauma Armenians have endured throughout the decades is understandable, as they had generations wiped out during the genocide. So it's quite intriguing that a highly violent Armenian organization would go on to commit criminal acts, oftentimes against their own people, getting away more times than they were busted. Armenian Power, or AP, or AP13's rise to power and their involvement in high-profile crimes is extraordinary. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe, and clank that bell notification so you won't miss another video in our ongoing series, LA Stories. The early years. In the year 1989, 15-year-old Armen Petrosyan arrived in East Hollywood as an immigrant. It did not take him long to find out that the reality he stepped into was plagued with gangs and crime. East Hollywood in 1989? Every other block had a different gang or crew. Armen's area, however, was white fence territory. Petrosyan was constantly bullied, chased, and roughed up. He got tired of being punked. So, along with his friends, decided to form a defensive alliance so they could stand up to bangers from White Fence, MS-13, TJ Locos, and whoever else wanted to pick on Armenian kids. Thus, Armenian Power was formed. Online sources say they started in the early 90s, but Crush Unit knows AP was already making waves by late 1989. By the mid-90s, the gang had about 120 members, forming ties with Russian organized crime and even the Mexican mafia. Armenian Power was now AP13, a Sureño gang and business partners with La M. They were actively involved in assault, theft, murder, drug trafficking, racketeering, kidnapping, fraud, gambling, and identity theft. Meanwhile, the aforementioned founder of AP, Armen Silent Petrosyan, was shot dead in Little Armenia, East Hollywood, on May 22, 2000. A member of White Fence named Jose Argueta was the shooter. On the surface, Armenian Power seems like just another street gang. No. AP13 is an organized criminal organization which has ties with some of the most ruthless sets in Los Angeles. They have ties to Armenia and Russia, dealing with organized crime figures directly. Not a flex, but you definitely better take Aras from AP seriously. A question that comes to mind is, how does AP operate as an organization? Structurally, Armenian Power is divided into three major groups. Street-level criminality. They will put in the work on a street level. Kidnapping, extortion, robbery, drug trafficking, prostitution, and other felonies. White-collar crimes. A mid-tier clique of the gang deals with crimes such as money laundering, bank fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, and cheating insurance companies. The elites. Lastly, the vets and leadership include wealthy criminals who have ties with the heads of Armenian and Russian organized crime in the US and overseas. These quote-unquote 1% of AP carry out operations with mob syndicates and even Mexican cartels. But it's not all illegal activities for these guys. C.R.U.S.H unit has heard of wealthy Asians investing in legit cannabis farms run by AP. They'll also fund business education so that AP heads can graduate and open pharmacies, retail stores, restaurants, marijuana dispensaries, etc., etc. Most AP members are not even professional criminals. Rather, they are regular people who work in fields such as construction, the auto sector, agriculture, while committing crimes to show loyalty to their greater Armenian family. The infamous Medicaid fraud. Let's now move on to the highly organized, white-collar crimes Armenian Power is known for. In 2010, AP and Mirzoyan Tarjanian, an organized crime group, targeted Medicaid, a government program that allows health insurance for adults and children with restricted income and resources. People who wouldn't be able to afford health care were provided funding and long-term medical services. What gave Armenian Power away in one of its biggest scams? In 2010, a so-called medical laboratory named Endeavor Diagnostics billed itself as a lab that performed $1 million worth of work for Medicare patients. Smelling something fishy, 2 FBI agents were sent to poke around, and lo and behold, all they found in an empty San Fernando Valley office was a desk and fax machine. There were no signs of patients, no workers, and no biological samples. It was evidently a case of fraud, where Medicare was robbed of $163 million for services that were never provided. The sophistication with which the crime was carried out was unmatched. Armenian gangsters scammed and infiltrated the government, jacking Uncle Sam. By stealing physician identities, AP and Mirzoyan Tarjanian, gangsters would then become licensed Medicare providers. They produced fake bills and had the government send funds to fraudulent bank accounts. They have also been known to hire people to act as fake patients, to bill Medicare for services they provided. In total, Medicare had so far paid $35 million out of the $163 million they were billed for. Armen Kazarian, an asylum seeker from Armenia who arrived in the US in 1996, was in charge of the entire operation. Kazarian is currently incarcerated. He's known as the moniker Thief-in-Law, and authorities claim that it is only the second time a criminal of such cunning has been arrested in the US. The fraud was exposed, so what happened to the money that was swindled? It's believed that the stolen money from Medicare was invested in Armenia. It's also alleged that it was Mirzoyan Tarjanian who made the overseas investment. Over 118 fake clinics were created in 25 states, including New York, Ohio, and Georgia, and 73 individuals were charged with money laundering, identity theft, bank fraud, and racketeering. The penalties of the accused ranged from 10 years to life in prison. What happened next? Armenian Power's highly sophisticated ways had been exposed. In February 2011, federal authorities decided to carry out a sting called Operation Power Outage. They targeted Armenian Power members operating in Southern California. The group, which had developed from a street gang to an international criminal organization, had over 200 members at this point, and it was time to curtail their activities. As a result of the operation, the authorities arrested 74 members and associates of AP involved in multiple offenses. They were charged with murder, kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, robbery, and assault, just to name a few.
You're a funny guy.
According to then U.S. Assistant Attorney General Lanny A. Brewer, quote, "The crimes alleged in these indictments were calculated, wide-ranging, and sophisticated," end quote. As a result of the crackdown, they found out that the group had been involved in more than 400 crimes. After the crackdown, the federal authorities handed down 2 indictments in relation to the arrests that were made. In the first indictment, 29 defendants were charged with white-collar crimes, including credit card skimming, producing counterfeit checks, and identity theft. Moreover, charges of extortion, theft, bank fraud, drug distribution, and illegal gambling activities were also given. As for the second indictment, 20 defendants were charged with a bank fraud scheme involving the elderly. They were reported to have bribed some bank employees in order to obtain information that would give them access to bank accounts, resulting in losses of $10 million. The crimes included financial and violent activities, and the total loss caused by members of AP-13 was estimated at $20 million. It seems next to impossible that Armenian Power was able to pull off such levels of criminal activities on its own. The organization definitely has a lot of associates that help its members get access to arms and drugs whenever needed. Their reach is much wider than what a traditional street gang would have. What solidifies this claim is the 2012 incident when a female federal district court clerk's office employee in LA was arrested, along with her husband under the accusation of disclosing confidential information to Armenian Power members and associates. The couple had stolen federal court documents, giving them to AP members, and tipped off defendants before their arrests were carried out. As a consequence to this breach, the couple was sentenced to 6 months and 5 years in prison, respectively. Now that almost 90 members of Armenian Power are either serving time or awaiting their sentence, the DA's office and authorities feel that AP's power has been cut off at the knees. Even though everyone cannot be arrested or controlled, at least it'll make them more cautious of their activities, now that they're aware of the authorities' vested interest in them. Outro. Even though Operation Power Outage did shake Armenian Power's structure, gangs like them don't just disappear overnight. They have an extremely organized, cunning network of people carefully selected that work relentlessly to meet their agenda. In the case of AP13, the agenda was to extract as much money as possible, so they resorted to white-collar crimes. They've been able to carry out theft so skillfully while evading the law for a significant time. It just shows that they're criminal masterminds. AP13 members and associates didn't even flinch at the thought of getting caught and being sent to prison for a lifetime. What started as a sort of neighborhood defense league, these Armenian students ended up emerging as one of the strongest, most threatening organizations operating in Los Angeles. The gang spread through Hollywood, Burbank, and Glendale. Not only that, the claims of their allegiance with Russia, the Mexican Mafia, and other elite organized crime groups still remain persistent. After all, it would not have been possible for them to carry out such large-scale crimes without gangland assistance. You'd be astonished to know that 2 AP gang members were videotaped in Syria in 2014. They were in the Syrian civil war, where they were spotted fighting in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. To think how far this gang can go. AP has been significantly taken down since the Operation Power outage. However, the gang still holds great influence within LA, continuing to extort money through fraudulent activities, violence, murder, identity theft, and whatever lines their pockets. It's virtually impossible to eliminate any such organization from its very roots because they have strong allegiances. And let's be real, people find it a bit comforting that their ethnicity is being protected by someone who has connections to the underworld. Armenian Americans have been in the country for more than a century, and even though they are mostly peaceful citizens, such elements have always existed and will continue to do so. Hey, but it's not all bad. In 1995, Armenian students at Hollywood High School were severely outnumbered in a massive school brawl pitting them against Salvadorians. Within minutes, 20 AP members were dispatched to the school, and they arrived to stop the attack. An Armenian Hollywood High School student named Sonia said, quote, "I'm not a fan of AP. I think they cause trouble for Armenians. But at that moment, I was very, very proud of them." End quote. You can pretty much assume she's not the only Armenian civilian who has a love-hate thing for AP. That's gonna do it. Thank you for watching, and feel free to make video requests in the comments below. Our Rancho San Pedro one was based off of a comment, so Crush Unit will honor requests. Peace.
You know you're made.